Has life under capitalism led you to narrowly focus on money as your primary source of wealth, security, and even your own self-worth? Well, there's a capitalism survival hack that helped me stop doing that and completely changed my life. Certainly in our current economic and social reality, financial capital plays a leading role. But when you think of money as the only resource or form of wealth available to you, you end up overlooking numerous other resources and forms of wealth all around you. And while they don't easily fit into spreadsheets, recognizing what I've come to call the multiple forms of capital can bring us closer to true financial resilience as well as a more joyful and meaningful life, despite the capitalist hellscape in which we currently find ourselves. Now, I'm not ignoring the fact that a certain amount of money lends greater stability to our lives, but financial capital is extremely fragile, speculative, and potentially unreliable. Even conventional personal finance advice encourages you to diversify your assets. That's why in this video, I'd like to explore a much more expansive view of wealth that diversifies your portfolio exponentially and lends greater stability, resilience, and even joy that just can't be found when relying on money alone, especially on our climate-challenged planet. Hello, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Laura, a green living and money coach. Here I talk all about how we can build true wealth while doing a lot less to uphold those harmful elements of capitalism. According to the Oxford Dictionary, capital is wealth in the form of money or other assets, as well as a valuable resource of a particular kind. From an economics perspective, capital also has the potential to generate more wealth. All of these other forms of capital I'm about to talk about have the potential to do just that. That's why I made this life-changing concept and way of thinking a central part of my personal economy makeover course. So if you want to dive even deeper into this realm, check out the link for the course in the description below. I first encountered this concept of other forms of wealth through my involvement in permaculture, and in particular a well-known article written by permaculturalists Ethan Rowland and Gregory Landua called The 8 Forms of Capital. But this idea isn't original to permaculture. Even before that, professors working on rural economic development had compiled what they called the Community Capitals Framework, and they were using it in lower-income rural communities to show the people in those communities all of the other forms of wealth and resources beyond financial capital that they had access to. I suspect this perspective also aligns with and is influenced by Native American ideas around wealth and abundance. This concept of the multiple forms of capital is what my audiences and coaching clients have told me has most opened their minds and shifted their thinking around building wealth on a climate-challenged planet. Well, yes, the first of the 8 forms of capital is financial capital, the one we know most as a society and interact with on our daily basis, because we use it as our means of exchange. It's all the things you think of with Wall Street: currencies, stocks, bonds, cryptocurrency, and cash. These are all examples of financial capital. But let's move quickly on to those more compelling non-monetary forms of capital, starting with material capital. These are non-living physical objects, such as stone, bridges, metal, tools, and computers. This form of capital is probably the next most obvious, tangible, and sought after. One benefit of this form of capital is that it can be an alternative way to store financial capital. That's because those that retain some or all of their value, like maybe your car, a house, or a diamond ring, can be sold and converted back into financial capital. This form of capital can be especially advantageous if utilized in conjunction with an activity that increases one of your other forms of capital. For example, a jewelry maker invests in specialized tools that help her create high-quality jewelry. Then she can sell this jewelry for money or financial capital, recuperating the cost of those tools and owning the stored value of that specialized equipment should she ever want to sell them. Then there's living capital. That's made up of what we think of as natural resources like water, air, land, parks, healthy soil, plants, and trees. Consider the shade provided by the trees in your yard. They can help cool your house or apartment, significantly reducing your electric bill in the summer. Many people want to establish a garden or food forest in their yard or community because they grasp the value of natural capital. Nature is the ultimate model of abundance. Alleys, sidewalks, and other public right-of-ways are often littered with fallen fruit. And don't forget about some of the edible weeds you may be walking over. Instead of spending money to purchase the latest superfoods like acai, white mulberries, or chlorella, look to your own front yard or your neighbor's yard. Those edible weeds out there are likely far more nutritious than what you'll get in the store, and they're free. Unlike the produce in the grocery store, these plants haven't had the nutrition bred out of them in favor of a longer shelf life and larger size. You may be familiar with the concept of human capital. In this framework, we can think of it as intellectual capital combined with experiential capital. Intellectual capital is knowledge, creativity, and innovation. Society puts a great deal of value on this form of capital, emphasizing the importance of getting good grades in school and getting a college degree. It's another form of capital we can convert into financial capital when we get a job based on our education. Higher education, although not always, and possibly less and less these days, can translate into higher wages. Learning new skills can often lead to a raise or an additional income stream. Experiential capital is hands-on knowledge acquired by actually doing things. Riding a bike, writing a grant proposal, drawing, fixing something broken. There are many people who can repair cars that don't necessarily hold a degree from an auto mechanics school. They have experience working on cars and simply learned by doing. Having a degree or reading many books can be helpful, but having hands-on experience can be just as valuable, if not more, because it makes you more marketable. This form of capital goes hand in hand with intellectual capital, and we generally learn best when they happen in tandem. Experiential capital is also great for helping others and saving money. Which brings us to our next form of capital, social capital. Wikipedia describes it as a form of economic and cultural capital in which social networks are central. Transactions are marked by reciprocity, trust, and cooperation. And market agents produce goods and services not mainly for themselves, but for the common good. This is a fun and wonderful form of capital. You can accumulate it by attending potlucks, volunteering at a beach cleanup, attending a neighborhood civic association meeting, and doing so many other things. Having connections and community can be a very valuable form of capital. For example, if you ever lost a job and then let people in your network know that you were looking for a job, and then someone who knew you and saw that was able to get you an interview, and then you got the job, well, then you just used your social capital to get a new job. True resilience stems from being very rich in social capital. For me, the classic example of social capital is the traditional Amish barn raising, during which families gather to collectively build a new barn for someone in their community. These gatherings seamlessly combine socializing with a practical goal. As the locals convene to build the barn, they strengthen their community bonds and reinforce the principle of mutual aid that's so strongly embedded in their culture. One accumulates spiritual capital through religion, spirituality, meditation, yoga, and other means of connection to self and the universe. This includes our connection to something larger than ourselves, our sense of place in the world, our religious and spiritual practices. The Buddhist concept of karma is an example of a spiritual currency. Cultural capital is exemplified by the things shared by groups of people, such as music, history, food, theater, holidays. It's the only form of capital that can't be individually held or cultivated. When thinking of where we want to live, many of us consider the cultural amenities available in particular cities. Popular tourist destinations often have a strong sense of their local history and culture and create sites and attractions to share it with visitors and locals alike. Inventive entrepreneurs are finding ways to tap their community's cultural capital to create unique tours for tourists and residents alike. There are 3 more forms of wealth I think about that enrich each of us individually and aid tremendously in our quality of life. So I want to also mention those here. These forms of capital are invaluable for the well-being and peace of mind they bring to our lives. They are also fundamental to our efforts to wisely cultivate, steward, tap, and appreciate the 8 forms of capital. Yet despite all of the amazing benefits they contribute to our lives, we are highly prone to taking them for granted and even squandering them. Do you think of your health as a form of wealth or capital? Healthcare costs are one of the major expenses Americans worry about saving up for to cover in retirement. Yet we rarely discuss the long-term financial benefits of making wise health-related decisions. Think food choices, physical activity, and positive social interactions. Nurturing a foundation of good health can reduce our medical expenses and greatly improve our state of mind throughout our lives. And how about time capital? Since we know that what truly brings us happiness is autonomy over how we decide to spend our time, it shouldn't be difficult to grasp the tremendous value of your own time. Once you've chosen to spend an hour doing something, you'll never get that hour back. Time capital, unlike financial capital, is a finite resource. Are you filling your life with things that bring you joy and move you towards your vision of a wealthy life? Similarly, there are tremendous benefits to be gained by capturing people's attention. Our collective attention capital and data has been transformed into billions and probably trillions of dollars for media tycoons and companies like Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook. Every waking moment, you are choosing to direct your attention somewhere. Be mindful of whether you're directing it in ways that enrich your own life or only the wallets of others. When you step back and look at all of these forms of capital, what you see is that it's not the money or financial capital we really want. It's all these other forms of capital. It's just that our society is focused on financial capital as the means of exchange and gateway to access the other forms of capital. Yet money doesn't have any intrinsic value in and of itself. It seems to me that the more we do to circumvent money and more directly access these other forms of capital, the more we do to reduce the impact of inflation in our own lives. Your portfolio of multiple forms of wealth may be the ultimate anti-capitalist hedge fund, shielding you against inflation and rising prices. Think about it. According to the Hedge Fund Marketing Association, a hedge fund is an alternative investment that is designed to protect investment portfolios from market uncertainty while generating positive returns in both up and down markets. With all of the foraging, gardening, bartering, and dumpster diving that my boyfriend and I do, we rarely buy groceries and find ourselves blissfully less affected by rising food costs and able to share a lot more of this food with others. The point isn't for you to stress about personally being rich in each of the forms of capital. Certainly you may find some gaps or areas for personal improvement, but it's more about the awareness of the capital, wealth, and assets already in your life. And you can also think more broadly about the forms of capital members of your family, your circle of friends, and your neighborhood and community are already rich in that you might tap as well if you needed them, as well as what you can share from your more holistic wealth portfolio with your community. I personally feel much more resilient and joyful when I think in terms of these multiple forms of capital, as opposed to only thinking about money and how much of it I have or someday will have. Often when we step back and assess how much of each of these forms of capital we already have in our own lives, we discover that we're far richer and more resilient than we thought. In my own journey to achieve financial stability on a climate-challenged planet without negating the very future I'm preparing for, I find myself coming back again and again to cultivating these multiple forms of capital as the true sources of wealth and resilience in my life. This has led me to do things like plant soap nut trees in my yard to provide me with an easy-to-grow product that I can use myself, gift, barter, or sell if I need to identify the many tropical fruit trees that litter the alleys around me with unwanted mangoes, lychees, avocados, and more, which I rescue to eat, share, barter, or exchange for other forms of capital. To tap my intellectual capital, I co-wrote a book called Growing Free. And I'm also developing strong social bonds with people in my community, and we're finding ways to learn and share new skills together while bringing more intentionality to our relationships with each other, and more resilience, connection, and fun into our lives. So how will you tap the multiple forms of capital to reduce capitalism's chokehold on your life? Just a reminder, if you're interested in exploring a whole new way of thinking about designing your personal economy, check out my personal economy makeover course in the description below. That's it for now. See you in the next video.